Okay, good morning, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. This is Steve Bernstein. I'm one of the founders and CEO at Waypoint Group. Very pleased, proud to have Kimberly Graham and Derek Taylor from Intacct joining us. Just a little bit of housekeeping. This will be, we'll have a couple of slides to help drive the discussion. Very happy to send the slides out afterwards, but honestly, most of the theme here will be just a discussion about what we've been able to see happening with Intacct, and you'll be hearing directly from the horse's mouths of the folks that have been able to drive these results. Before I start, I do want to send my thoughts and prayers out to the folks in Belgium. Having lived there for a few years myself, I'm very intimately familiar with the environment and very sad to see what's going on in Belgium today. So I do thank everybody for joining the webinar despite some of the issues we see going on in the world today. So I'm the guy on the right, and Derek's the other bald guy on the left, and of course we got Kimberly in the middle. Derek has been driving customer success for, well, more than 20 years. He's a VP of Client Services for Intacct, responsible for the professional and technical service teams, also the implementation partners, and customer support organization, so quite a lot of the customer-facing group. He's been a senior leader and held leadership executive positions in customer success roles at Responses, Digital Fuel, Extensity, among other companies, and very pleased to have you join us today.
Thank you, Steve.
Kimberly Graham is our program manager at Intacct, very, very focused on customer success through her career. As her role as the program manager for customer success at Intacct, she's been leading and creating very exciting customer-facing programs and initiatives that have been driving a very effective closed-loop process within the company. She's 100% focused on customer success, 100% committed to cloud, and couldn't be happier to join Intacct and be a part of the program and process here. So welcome. Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you, Steve.
So, okay. So we're here to talk about best practices from the practitioners. Derek, I'd like to start with you, actually,
Sure.
with let's talk about kind of what maybe what prompted you on this journey of customer success and feedback, and kind of what you've seen most recently.
Sure. So, as a software as a service cloud company, customer success is vitally important to us, and it's a mantra that our CEO, Rob Reed, preaches daily and throughout the organization. So I think the big thing about the overall program and what we've done is that we are hearing from our customers and that we're engaged. And, as we go through some of the discussion, we'll talk about statistics and lessons learned, but I think the main thing is that our customers are engaged and that we're hearing from them and we're getting feedback and we're able to take action on that feedback.
Kimberly, anything to?
I would agree, and it is one of the mantras of the company, and as part of our Customer for Life program, this is a key element, really, to extend the reach of our account managers, and so I would agree with Derek.
So a lot of companies send surveys, right,
Mm-hmm.
and quote, collect feedback, and I think when we first met a number of years ago, Intacct was doing the same. What would you say has changed fundamentally, and why did you change your trajectory?
Yeah, I think 2 years ago maybe it was 3, I can't remember now, Steve, when we first engaged, we had to actually put our customer success program on hold because we were seeing lack of engagement and response from our customers. We were getting less than 5% response rates on our outreach to our customers through our survey. So, we engaged with you and your team and reevaluated our overall program and what we were doing and how we were engaging. And the other thing that we did was we changed from, a customer account management focus, and we made this a company-wide effort. So we put together a customer success steering committee that included, my organization, sales, product management, engineering, marketing. And we sat down with you and your team and spent several months just reevaluating our overall program, goals, objectives, and how we wanted to communicate to our customers and how we were going to communicate both internally and externally, and as importantly, what was the impact to our customers and what we're going to do based on that feedback that they provided.
Kimberly, I think you've been working more with individual customers, kind of account-based feedback approach, right? Is there anything that you've seen recently or over the past maybe 12 months that has been helping drive success in that regard?
Oh, absolutely. So I stepped in to manage the program a year ago, and we've not only seen a lot of changes, but we've adapted to the change as well. One of the areas that we've continued to focus in on is not only responding and reaching out to absolutely every single respondent, but even if we get negative comments with a promoter score and so forth, we're proactively reaching out. But we've made a lot of changes. We'll continue to make a lot of changes, but I think that's just inherent with a good program.
Well, let's dive into some of what those changes are, I think, right, and talk about the cycle that I think you've been very diligent about adopting. So I know, this kind of cycle, gathering feedback and then driving a closed-loop follow-up process has been a core piece of what's been going on with Intacct. It's been a journey. So maybe we start with kind of this idea of recruiting the right contacts. I think a lot of companies have, difficulty in making sure that they're talking to the right people at the right time. How do you know if you're talking to the right people?
Well, actually, the NPS process has really given us the opportunity to extend our reach beyond what our account managers can typically do. We have two different types of account managers, strategic and corporate, and they've got a big workload with the job that they have, and so we've actually extended our reach to additional contacts, and that certainly helped. We've also identified through the survey process that there were perhaps some initial contacts involved in the implementation that are no longer there. So it's an iterative process with regard to reviewing the list, making sure that we make updates, but then also refine our list with regard to the contact type, and that certainly helped.
So it sounds like you don't just send to all the users of your system, or you don't just send to all the contacts in Salesforce, for example.
No, we actually pull a list based on the cadence that we've settled into, which is a leading indicator based on our annual renewal process. And I give the account managers the chance to review the list ahead of time to determine any that should be suppressed for one reason or another, or perhaps added. And then that's the list that we go by. Interesting.
So account managers can review the list. Does that result in any sort of cherry picking?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Our account managers don't do that. First of all, that would be a red flag, and our account managers actually have embraced this process because they want to know the negative feedback as well, because that way we can address it head on.
Yeah, and I think as importantly is, we want to hear from our customers. So our goal is, over the course of a year, we want to survey and reach out to and touch 100% of our customers. And so the account managers can't say, oh, don't survey this customer or survey that customer. It's really based on a number of different criteria we've defined that Kimberly has outlined. And each quarter we go through the list and say, okay, are we surveying this customer this quarter based on that criteria that we've defined?
And also, I would argue that, who can say what the right contact is, because you may have an influencer or decision maker who is really guiding decisions based on feedback that they have from day-to-day users. And so by expanding our reach to those day-to-day users and even some of the others, it helps shed light on what that user experience actually is.
So now that we've got a lot of focus, I guess, on a clean and accurate contact list, I know one of the things that you've been driving collectively is focus on roles. In fact, Kimberly, you just mentioned decision makers and influencers. Derek, let me ask you, does the focus on roles help, how does that help the company, I guess, with regards to this idea of reaching out to the right people?
We look at the role information in the surveys, and with TopBox we're able to do this a lot more efficiently and effectively because the decision makers are looking at Intacct and the software a lot differently than the day-to-day users and an influencer or an admin. So we have decision makers that are responding to the survey that may actually never use the software. But as Kimberly mentioned, they're obviously getting input from their finance teams and their organization, and as to how the software is working. And from the decision maker's perspective, they're signing the renewal checks every year and want to know, is this software providing benefit and value to my organization? Am I getting the data that I need to run my operation? There's a different perspective and feedback that you're going to get from the day-to-day user that's in there and generating invoices and paying bills and using the software on a day-to-day basis. So we want, again, as Kimberly outlined, we want feedback from all of the constituents within the ecosystem, because it's important to us and it drives how we drive the product and make innovation and service our customers.
And the use of the contact types that we use for NPS, which are influencer, decision maker, day-to-day user, and other, has actually helped our overall communication effort, because while it started with the NPS process, we're appending our contact data in Salesforce to reflect that. And what's nice is it maps to personas defined by our product marketing team. So it's really helping us clean up our data, because oftentimes in the pre-sales process you have people that are maybe influential in the decision-making process at that level, but not necessarily from a user's perspective. So that's really helped us.
Fabulous. Yeah, so the role-based approach and understanding feedback from each of those constituent roles, it sounds like you've also been able to drive up participation from those specific roles. Is that right? You were talking earlier about low engagement, low response rates.
Yeah, I mean, since we revised the process and established a different cadence, our account response rates went from less than 5% to almost 50% of the customers that we're surveying today are responding. And, again, we want to hear from 100% of our customers, but, hearing from 50% of our customers gives us a good feeling that the data is statistically relevant, and we're hearing the true customer sentiment. And for any customers that are out there, we want to hear from all of you, and we tell all of our customers at our annual user conference and whenever we engage, this is an important process to us. We take the feedback very seriously, and we react on it at a company level.
And Derek just hit the nail on the head. The reason I believe, in addition to process changes and all that as well, I think that the more our customers realizing that we are listening, the more they're likely to respond. So I think that's helped increase response as well. Seems
like that's been the case through those improvements. So something you mentioned earlier, Kimberly, was you mentioned the word cadence, and so, a lot of companies, what's wrong with just sending out a request for feedback like once a year to all your customers, right? Why not take that approach? How do you do it instead?
It used to be about a year ago that we would pay attention to who we had surveyed and then suppress them, and so there really wasn't a regular cadence. And we made the choice to survey based on a subscription end date 2 quarters out. So we're currently in the middle of a wave right now where it's addressing customers with a September 1st through December 31st subscription end date. And that's a leading indicator and provides intelligence based on the health of our upcoming renewal base. And so that has really helped us. And plus it just helps segment that we know it's going to feed right into that normal cadence, and also so that we don't over-survey.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, in this industry and with technology and innovation, a year is a long time. We have quarterly releases that come out, and we're continually making updates to the product. And so, for us to wait a year to hear customer sentiment would just put us behind the curve in terms of how we drive the product and how we change our organization to make sure our customers are successful.
Right, so you're able to get both a leading indicator as well as, sounds like, not over-surveying, so you can get that continuous cadence, look at the trend without overburdening any one customer. Is that
Yeah, and so we don't survey every customer every quarter. We survey 25% of our customers each quarter based on some of the criteria that Kimberly outlined.
Yeah.
I should also mention that we do include those customers that are in implementation or live status. That's actually helped us get ahead of some potential issues, or actually some good things as well, from customers that are already or that are not yet considered live but going through implementation.
There's another bullet on the slide. I'd be remiss if we didn't address it, which is develop non-responders. And I know we've been talking a little bit about response rate, but why do we? You get feedback and you kind of get what you get. What's this about non-responders?
Non-responders are considered a danger zone for us, and when we talk about the evolution of our NPS process and program, this has been a key for us in realizing that we don't consider a non-responder as being somebody who's just status quo and everything's great. We need to hear from them because we need to know the good, the bad, the ugly so that we can address it head on. So that's actually one of the things that we have taken proactive steps to incorporate into the program, I should say. This quarter we are going after our strategic and mid-market accounts, and we're starting with the influencer and decision maker contact types that are non-responders, and we will be treating those separately and ensuring that the account manager contacts those.
Yeah, I think, the customers that are not responding and are not engaged, they're at risk. We've had many situations where customers have responded negatively to a survey, and we've gotten on the call and spent a half hour with them, and they're totally turned around because it was, in some cases, a matter of checking a box on the software to improve their process. So if they weren't engaged and they didn't provide that feedback, we wouldn't have been able to have that opportunity to turn them around and make those improvements.
Fabulous. Yeah, so it's more than just a score. It sounds like, response rates are a leading metric here as well, right, and driving up as a measure of engagement?
Yeah, I mean, the score is obviously everyone wants to get a 9 or 10 response, but as importantly as the response is the customer engagement. So if you're not a satisfied customer, obviously we're not happy, but we want to hear that so that we can figure out how to make you a satisfied customer.
So then we get into this next phase, right? We want to then move from the introduction piece to now talking about the next phase about addressing urgent issues. So there's a lot of work, I think, that happens here, right? And we're talking about the follow-up process in a number of different ways. Maybe we start with then, as responses come in, we were looking here on the slide, follow up on responses to convert detractors, activate promoters. Tell me a little bit more about how that's done, how you resource it. How is that follow-up process being handled?
So as Derek mentioned earlier, because this is part of our company culture, everybody knows when an NPS wave is coming. So it's an all hands on deck or the needed hands on deck. So as responses come in, we create what's called a call to action, or CTA in Gainsight, which is basically a task that the account managers use to really manage the activity. And we've set up a process by which that they can update the status and reason so that we have intelligence behind not only where things stand, but also the reason for that. And then they're also adding comments. We also initiate chatter feeds directly from that CTA so that we can engage other people. One of the areas that has been a relatively recent change is that immediately upon receipt of the NPS response, if there is a detractor or any negative comment, you could have a 10 NPS score, but if there's any action in the comment needed, I'm initiating a chatter feed to support as well as the account manager, and oftentimes our director of support can help triage that or engage additional resources before the account manager even needs to become involved. So it's really helping to engage the right resources quickly. We do that for every single respondent, whether they are detractor, passive, or promoter, and we'll be doing the same process for the non-responders, as I mentioned, for those strategic and mid-market accounts.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Kimberly highlighted is, a couple of different terminology and software that we use. we are a software cloud company, and so we leverage different technologies, and some of it is historical, the use of Gainsight, Chatter, Salesforce, which we heavily integrate and use internally. But, in terms of TopBox, we also leverage TopBox for all that analytics, as well as when we survey our partners, we use and leverage TopBox for the call to actions, because all of it is driven through that software. So, we leverage a lot of technology to drive the process. When we first engaged Steve, all of it was driven through me, through Excel spreadsheets, which obviously wasn't scalable, wasn't static, and was very time consuming. And so, the automation process and leveraging TopBox and your skills in the group has been tremendous in allowing us to get to where we are.
Yeah, there's a lot of buzz in the industry about customer success software and solutions. I know TopBox is one of them, but you've found that, I guess, you need a combination of these to make it work properly?
Some of the use of the technologies that we have is based on our legacy investments in infrastructure and setup. When we first started talking about TopBox, we could have potentially leveraged TopBox for the entire process, the call to actions, obviously executing the survey. But because of some of the processes and procedures that we had already established, that wasn't going to work for us overall as a company. So, we leverage TopBox for executing the surveys and for the call to actions for part of our organization, and then we leverage a combination of TopBox, Salesforce, and Gainsight for other parts of the organization.
And it sounds like, Kimberly, you mentioned CTAs that are created through Gainsight. So as far as the end account owner or the person who's following up, they get a seamless experience. Do they have to manage lots of different technology, or how does that work with them?
No, I think the key to an effective program is really identifying what you can do to streamline for the front line. So our account managers, they've got a busy job. So using CTAs and Gainsight, that's the single source for them behind the scenes. I'm actively using TopBox, a lot of wave over wave comparisons, a lot of what I would consider more advanced segmentation, looking up, like we've been working together on, perhaps negative comments associated with a single score, and so forth. So, I couldn't do without TopBox. And then Salesforce is really the middle ground. That's where we're updating our contact records and, opt-outs and all that. But again, it goes back to program management and effective program management and trying to streamline things for the front lines.
Bottom line is, it sounds like your customers are getting follow-up, right? When they're submitting their responses, that they're hearing back from Intacct directly, one-to-one, right, on their response, right, and making it right. Phenomenal. Yeah. And maybe is that part of that bandwidth discussion we had earlier about the cadence, right? Making sure that you're not getting too much feedback all at once, because the follow-up process must be a lot of work, no?
It is, and that was one of the key things that when we put the cadence and the guidelines in place, we started out with some smaller surveys to get a sense of, what it was like to get 10, 50, 100, 200 plus responses. And again, we are focused on responding to all of the feedback that we get. And so we wanted to make sure as an organization that we had the capacity and the process in place to actively respond to all the feedback that we were getting from our customers, because again, this is not just about us, doing a survey and getting a score. It's really about understanding what our customer sentiment is and, how they're feeling about not just the product, but about the organization as a whole.
But I also think it ties back to even the engagement of your team, because oftentimes, like I mentioned earlier, by the time the account manager would actually even get to it, it's already been triaged by support, it's been escalated to our professional services organization, and so forth. And so it, in some cases, takes a village, and I think it's just a matter of making sure you streamline that, and I think it's become, very effective.
So then we move from the urgent issue follow-up, right, into kind of the analytics and the one-to-many, I guess, follow-up, right? Closing the loop more broadly, the breadth and depth discussions. I know there's again, a lot of activity that happens here. I guess, what advice would you give to companies that are strapped for resources? Before we get into the depth of what you do in this area, how do you resource this kind of an approach to really make it effective?
I think, as Kimberly outlined, it's not one group. So, as I started out earlier, when we revised our overall program, I'm the executive sponsor and I drive the overall program, but there is an exec from the sales organization, marketing, product management, engineering. Every group understands the process, how it works, and how their teams will be engaged. And so the account managers are on the front line for a lot of the call to actions, but some of the call to actions go directly to support, some of them go directly to the services team. Product managers have call to actions and they schedule meetings with customers. So it's really about not focusing on one particular group or individual, but really the entire organization understands that when this process is underway, you may have to and will have to engage with the customer depending on the feedback that we're receiving.
And in the case of how we're using Chatter, it's imperative that the account managers stay involved. So through the use of Chatter, all this work can be going on and these escalations can be going on, but because the account manager is copied on that Chatter feed, they're aware of what's going on without actually necessarily being the one that's driving that.
So, I would say for someone who's got bandwidth issues and doesn't have a cross-functional team, you could still do the same process, just scale it back. But the key thing is to make sure that you engage with the customers that provide feedback. And if you can only do that for 10% of your customers, then do 10%, and then do 10% when you have more capacity. So, but the key thing is really having that closed loop and engaging with customers.
So you've got an ability to follow up one-to-one, right, with the urgent issues, but then it sounds like in this area is more in the one-to-many. There's a lot of analytics that you're conducting. I mean, what sort of, I guess, analysis are you doing to to understand the themes? How is that done?
So we leverage TopBox and the analytical capabilities. So I'm in there regularly looking at role-based feedback, financial linkage, quarter-over-quarter trends. I look at customer trends quarter to quarter. I review. I've provided logins to TopBox for all the product management team, and after each survey, we have a sit down and review the customer feedback to drive product management and how they're looking at the roadmap. I sit down and review with the engineering managers the feedback and the survey results. The sales organization is looking at the feedback and looking at customers who are providing positive feedback so that they can work with them and help us close new customers and bring in new opportunities. So again, this is leveraged across the entire organization. Not just for the positive feedback, but also, where can we improve? And each organization is looking at the data to understand how do we improve as an organization.
In the case of the one-to-many versus one-to-one, what we also do is if there are multiple respondents from a single account that are, maybe have similar issues or vary, we do joint conference calls. The account manager drives that to make sure that they're dealing with all the respondents at once to be more efficient. We're also looking at variance between an account, because if you've got somebody who ranks us low, let's say for reporting, but then another business user in the same company ranks high, then there's probably a training issue. And so we do look within the account for multiples as well.
And then does that drive you've got, it says QBRs, joint account reviews. I mean, tell me a little bit more about that process. Maybe that's to both of you.
I think it's as needed because, again, our account managers are intimately involved with their customers, but as they see the respondents come in, they're looking at an account in totality with regard to all of the responses. So if they can be more efficient in pulling people together, then that's what they're going to do. And we also know, again, that feedback goes upwards with regard to, going to decision makers and so forth. So by getting, all parties together, they can help address it.
So you talked about individual contacts. So you're looking inside the account, and then you can trend the account? Do you do like wave over wave or quarter over quarter trending?
We do. So this is, I think, our 7th quarter with the revised process that we're conducting the survey. So we're just into the 2nd year and where customers are getting surveyed for the 2nd time. So, we are able to do that quarter to quarter trend for customers who've been previously surveyed. And as we get through this next 2 quarters, we should have, close to 100% cadence on customers who've been surveyed twice, and we'll be able to do more of that analysis.
One of the things that is part of our lessons learned is that has been a highly manual process on Derek's part, and that's something that I want to become more involved with. Specifically, the wave over wave, we're looking at, not only change for the better, change for the worst, or specifically where you have a passive or a detractor that's now all of a sudden not a non-responder. So it's not just about the wave over wave respondents, but also the absence of a response as well.
Yeah, interesting. Back to that idea of driving engagement and making sure that you're doing right by customers. I think it's an awesome approach. And Derek, you mentioned working with departments across the company. So everybody is internalizing this. Or do you call on people as part of the follow-up process to do any specific actions?
Both. So, yeah, people know when I'm calling, when the survey is out, if I'm sending an email, why I'm sending it. We also, at every company meeting, we have quarterly company meetings, and I present our quarterly survey results and feedback, and, it's quite candid and open, and sometimes it's not very pretty, but, we want everyone to understand what our customers are feeling and what they're saying, and as importantly, we want everyone in the organization to understand that they do have an impact on customer satisfaction, whether you're in finance and sending invoices and making sure those invoices are correct and accurate, whether you're in engineering and building the product, whether you're in QA and testing. Everyone at the company has an impact on customer satisfaction, and so we make sure that they understand the importance in what we're hearing.
And things are escalated quickly, too. We have a weekly meeting that is, many of our executives, including our CEO, attends every week. And so if there are any specific escalations that result from the NPS process, those are highlighted every Wednesday on an internal meeting.
So there's some questions coming in through the chat, by the way, and so keep them coming on the chat, please. One of the questions that came in was, with regards to this kind of follow-up process, a lot of companies send surveys. How would you say your customers have responded to the follow-up that you've been given, both one-to-one and one-to-many?
It's been very positive. In addition to the call to actions that Kimberly mentioned, we also produce a summary every quarter that is a write-up of what we've heard from our customers in this last survey and some of the actions that we've taken, and that could be product changes. In one quarter, we heard about some issues with our customer support organization, and so we made changes to how we operate the support group. And so that summary and follow-up document is sent to every customer that's invited in the survey, not just to the customers that are responding, but because, again, we want to make sure that everyone, if you didn't have an opportunity to respond to the survey, we want to make sure that they see that we do take the feedback and input seriously, and we are taking action.
We recently rebranded our NPS survey process as Intacct Listens because that's in fact what we're doing. And I think that is very important to point out. And I think we're also kind of leading our program with do unto others philosophy. And if you think about any time that you've personally responded to a survey, whether it's good or bad, and never received a response, I will never do business with Irvine Nissan again, nor Nissan America, because I blasted them, and then there's nothing. So you think about how you want to be treated, and I think that our customers are actually welcoming that touch point. Not only, thank you so much for your positive responses, but addressing issues head on, and not backing away from that. And I think that'll become more evident over time as the reputation of the program is, they're really acting on it. But also more introspectively, I think customers are realizing through our actions that, in some cases it is more training required or, accessing our community or, support case management and so forth. So some of it does fall back with our customers.
And what about when it isn't, right? I mean, are there things that you're learning about what the company needs to drive in the future beyond, training or documentation or some of the obvious things?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
There's a lot of that feedback, and every time I sit down with engineering, especially, they're like, okay, just tell me what I need to fix. Just give me the list. I'm like, unfortunately, there's not just 3 or 5 different things. It's a lot of things across different areas, and most of it, fortunately, is on our roadmap. It's, most of the feedback that we're getting in the surveys, we've already gotten that sentiment, and it's already been something that we've allocated to fix in the roadmap. The challenge is, it may be 2 or 3 quarters out before the customer actually sees that. But again, at least if we communicate to the customers, hey, we've gotten your feedback, we've gotten your input, this is on the roadmap, it's going to be, next quarter or the quarter after. And in a lot of those situations, we work with them and say, so let's talk about, what we can do now in the interim as a short-term workaround to make sure you can continue to run your business. So it's not, always going to be a perfect response, but as Kimberly mentioned, we're candid, we're open, and we know we are always striving to improve.
And also, in some cases, it's a simple thing to execute. We have one-page quick reference sheets for our support offering in marketing review right now, so that we can help simplify, here's how to work with support. We've also implemented, thanks to Derek, some additional training options as a result of the feedback. So we definitely are listening.
And Derek, you mentioned, replaying back to customers what you heard. Is that controversial? I mean, are you airing dirty laundry, or what's motivating you, I guess, to send that communication?
Again, I think it's the closed loop, as Kimberly outlined. If we send these surveys and the customers respond and we never follow up and tell them, hey, we've heard and here's what we're doing, then we're not going to continue to get 50% account response rate. I think our customers, everyone's busy, and we understand that, and the survey only takes 2 to 3 minutes, but some of our customers take 5 to 10 minutes because the comments are pretty lengthy, and they've taken a lot of time to provide feedback, and so we take that very importantly. We take their time. Their time is valuable, and we want to respect that, and we want to reflect that we appreciate their input. And again, we are taking action across all the parts of the organization based on what we're hearing from our customers.
There was a question I saw come in about the root cause process. I think a lot of companies, are looking at scores and then saying, okay, we need to improve usability, or we need to improve the ease of doing business. Looks like Intacct's able to go deeper than that. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you go deeper?
I think the main way we go deep. So the customer survey process is one aspect of our customer outreach. It's obviously a very important aspect, but the main way we get the feedback and take action is through the comments that our customers provide in the survey. We also have a robust community where customers can submit ideas and log enhancement requests. We get feedback from our customers through our customer support organization, working with our professional services team, working with our account managers. And so, the customer success program, the NPS program, is one aspect and one way that we get feedback from our customers. It's, again, a very important way, and we take it very seriously. But we want to hear from our customers however and wherever. I mean, we have our annual user conference, and we get a lot of feedback there. We have advisory councils with several customers, and we get feedback there. But again, we are a very customer-focused organization, and whatever way we can get customer input and feedback, we take it and we take action.
The analytical functionality of TopBox also helps identify the root cause, because by filtering, by looking at certain comments and associating that with specific scores, that's helped us as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I do with each survey in TopBox, there's a capability to tag comments and put a sentiment, and so I go through all of the comments and I tag it, whether it's a positive, neutral, or negative comment, and then I also create tags in terms of functional area, and then I produce reports and send it out to the various organizations. If it's a support area, I send it to my director of support and say, take a look at all these survey responses and let's talk about, what we're going to do to improve engineering, product management. So, leveraging the capability within TopBox to analyze the data has been very key for us.
Yeah, it sounds like making it easier for the organization by, giving them their role-specific reports, right? That's facilitated through TopBox?
It is.
Fabulous. So let's close on this last question, this last area about governance, KPIs, and maybe the overarching theme is, what advice would you give to your peers, your colleagues in your roles, right? So Derek, as an executive driving customer-facing service and support, what advice would you give to your peers in that area, and maybe that fits with KPIs and organizational change?
I would say a few things. One is that customer success must be looked at and thought about as a long-term company-wide effort. I've talked about that a lot, but we didn't start this program with the expectation we were going to do it for a few quarters and then stop. I mean, this is part of our culture, and it's only grown, and it's going to continue to grow and get bigger, especially hopefully as we get closer to 70-80+% response rate from our customers. We're going to continue to invest in this program to make it successful. I think the other thing I would say is to automate early. The program will quickly fail if there's too much manual effort, and I started out doing a lot of this through spreadsheets and email, and I said stop. I can't continue to do that because it was just too much. I think the other thing I would say is learn and adjust. You may not get it right the first time, so be flexible and adjust the program, but as I've mentioned time and again, make sure throughout that process you're open and candid with the customers, and lastly, make sure you have a closed loop. We want the feedback, and we drive a lot through our organization, but we also think this should, and hopefully our customers recognize this is a valuable program for them as well. And we want high scores, but like I talked about earlier, we also want to hear from customers that are not satisfied, because we do a lot of times we'll spend literally a half an hour with a customer and we're able to resolve all the issues and the problems that they've identified in the survey. So it is, a key part is closing the loop and making sure that we hear from our customers.
Fabulous. Yeah. So it's a lot of work, but it sounds like there's a lot of payoff in terms of driving company capabilities.
It is.
Yeah. Kimberly, same question for you. What advice for program managers?
So first and foremost, if you work for a company that is not customer-centric and doesn't believe in this type of process from the top down, run fast. Fortunately, I do, so I'm not going anywhere. Second, I would make sure that you don't ask what you're not willing to address. So to your point, Steve, about airing dirty laundry, when we get a detractor score, it gives us a chance to fix something that perhaps is broken, whether that is on our side or a perception of the customer. So that's actually an opportunity to improve something. I would find somebody who is passionate about the program to manage it. And also, just as Derek mentioned, to make sure that it is an iterative process and that you adjust not only the closed loop process, but the, what's working for your frontline employees, ways to improve communication, and just it's an iterative process. So it's never going to be fully baked, and you just have to realize that so that you can continue to improve it.
Well, so we are never ending in our own quest for feedback. So I would invite everybody on the call, or if you're listening to a recorded session, never too late to submit questions. Our contact information is all on the website. We would love to hear from you. We'd love to answer your questions about how to drive a more effective and ROI producing program. And to that end, actually, as well, there's an ebook that you might get started with.
Yeah, so I'll just jump in. If you go to that short link there on Bitly, there's you can easily download it, and it's basically just questions that you should be asking within your company, within the program, to get the best design. A lot of which that Intacct has adopted: role-based reporting, making sure you're hearing from a good percentage of people within an account, and how to set those guidelines. So definitely, a lot of good fodder there for thinking about how your program is designed and whether or not you're getting rich data and insights from your customers.
So bit.ly/more ROI ebook. Fabulous. All right. Well, thank you for making the time, everybody, to join us. Thank you to Kimberly and Derek for sharing some secrets of your success. Yeah. And look forward to collaborating.
And we'll be sending out the slides and recording, too, if anyone's wondering. So thank you. Bye.